In this video, we'll make a fun little character in Affinity Designer, all without the pen tool. Let's get started. To create this design, we'll make the basic shapes of the character first, and then we'll focus on each area of the character to give it detail. So just starting with the basic shapes, I'll grab the ellipse tool, and while holding shift, I'll drag this out for the head. Then I'll just move this so it's centered in the document. Then for the body, I'm going to go into our shapes by clicking the little gray triangle, and then I'm going to select the trapezoid tool. I'll click and drag out a trapezoid, and then I'll center it so it's right there next to the head. Then I'm going to convert this object to curves, and I'm going to select all of these nodes so that I can turn them into smooth nodes. So now we have a little bit more of a torso shape. I'll just grab the move tool again, and I'm just going to resize this. I'll hold Command or Control, which lets us resize it from its center point, which is pretty nice. Then we can adjust exactly where this is positioned. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little smaller and shorter though. Okay, next we're going to create another part of the body, and I'm going to duplicate this trapezoid for that. I'm just going to hold down Command or Control on my keyboard, and I'll click and drag downward. And then while holding Command or Control, I'm just going to expand from the center like that. Okay, so now that we have the basic body shape, next I want to create the legs. So to start, I'm going to go into our shapes and I'll grab the rounded rectangle tool. Then just off to the side over here, I'm going to click and drag out a rectangle, and I'm going to curve the corners in all the way. So this will be our thigh. I'm just going to move this in place over here. And then I'm going to duplicate this by holding Command or Control and clicking and dragging over here. This piece is going to be the calf. To create the calf shape, I'm actually going to convert this object to curves. So now you can see all of these different nodes that we can adjust. And what I want to do is I'm going to click on one of the nodes here at the bottom, and then while holding Shift, I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to bring this in. So I think I'll just do this maybe just one time. So again, I'll do this to the other one, Shift, and I'll move the arrow key over one time. Then I'm going to select these two nodes, and I'm just going to turn them into smooth nodes. Using the move tool, I'll move this into place, and now we have a nice little calf shape that we can put right in here. Alright, so next I want to make the foot. For the foot, I'll go into the shapes, and I'm going to grab the triangle tool, and I'll just click and drag out a triangle. The nice thing about the triangle tool is you can adjust this top point here to create more of a foot shape, if you can see what I mean there. I think I'll move this point over just a little bit more. Then I'm going to place this so that the angle is looking like that, and you can adjust how big the foot is a little bit. I think maybe a little bit bigger. Alright, that's looking pretty good. We have one of the legs done. I want to duplicate this leg for the other side, so I'll hold Shift and select all of these layers. Then I'll press Command or Control J to duplicate them. I'm going to come over here, and with the Move tool selected, I'll right-click on this leg, and I'll go down to where it says Transform, and I'll flip it horizontally, just so we have a mirrored image here. I'll hold Shift to move this over so the legs stay nice and in line with each other. Then over in the layers, I'm going to select all of the legs here, and I'm just going to make sure that they're centered with the body. While all of those are selected, I'm just going to group them by pressing Command or Control G. And then I can rename this group Legs. Okay, next I want to make the arms. And to keep this simple, I'm actually just going to steal the legs for this. So opening up the leg group, I'm going to steal the calf and the thigh shape, but I want to do it from the same leg. So I'll choose this one, and then while holding Command or Control, I'll choose this one. I'll press Command or Control J to duplicate them. And then I'm going to drag these layers above the leg group so they're out on their own. And now I can just move them over here, and we can use this for the arm. We can rotate these pieces so they look like little arm joints. There's the arm, the elbow, and then the lower arm there. And then we can move these in place. I think for now I'll just leave it relatively straight. We can adjust how they're positioned a little bit later. Okay, with one arm in place, I just want to create the hand, and I'm going to keep it super simple for this design. I'll go over to our shapes and select the rounded rectangle tool. Then I'll just click and drag out a fist shape. This will be clasping our sword later, so no need to add detail for fingers or anything like that. This will work just fine. Alright, with one arm done, I'll select all of these layers. I'll press Command or Control J to duplicate them. And then I'll get out the Move tool by pressing V on my keyboard. I'll right-click and I'll transform these by flipping them horizontally. And now while holding Shift, I'll just move it over so this stays nice and in line with the other arm. And now we have the arms. I think I need to move this in just a little bit more so they match. Like that. Okay, so now we have all of the basic shapes for our design, and with that finished, it's detail time. So just for fun, I actually want to start by making the sword and the shield, and then we can come back to the body later on. I'll just select all of these layers and move them over to the side, and let's go ahead and start by making the sword. To start, I'll make the handle for the sword. I'm going to use the rounded rectangle tool. I'll just click and drag out a rounded rectangle. I'll make the corners totally rounded, and then I'll place this in the center of the document like this. I'm just going to do this one more time, creating a rounded rectangle with fully rounded corners, and this will be what the blade sits in. I'll make sure that this is nice and centered as well. And then for the blade, I'm going to grab the rectangle tool. I'll click and drag out a rectangle shape and make sure that it's centered. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit, and then I'll convert this shape to curves. Now that it's converted to curves, I can click right in the center at the top here to add a node, and then I can just drag this upward to create that blade shape. Then I'm going to select one of the bottom nodes, and using the arrow keys and Shift on my keyboard, I'm just going to move it over twice. I'll do the same for the other side. So now we have this nice sword shape here, and now I think I want to adjust some of the colors. So I'm going to select the handle here, and I'm going to make this a nice deep red color. For the blade, I'm going to place this so it's underneath the handle, that way it's just tucked in there. Then I'm going to choose a blue-gray color. So in the color wheel, I'll bring it over to the blues, and then I'll drag it down so we're approaching gray here. And I'll just make this a super light gray with a little hint of blue. To finish off the sword, I'm going to grab the rectangle tool one more time, and I'm going to click and drag a rectangle so it's over half of the sword. And for this one, I'm going to make this a nice deep blue-gray color. And then I'll place this as a child layer to the blade. So you can see we just have a little bit of a shadow going on to add some extra detail to the sword. With that finished, I'll select all of the sword's layers, and I'll press Command or Control G to group them, and I'll just rename this group Sword. Alright, that was a fun piece to make. Let's go ahead and make the shield next. I'll grab the rectangle tool, and I'll click and drag out a rectangle like this, and I'll make sure it's nice and centered in our document. Then I'm going to convert this shape to curves. I'll click right in the center bottom, and then I'm just going to drag this downward to create our shield shape. To make this a little cutesier though, I'm going to have this bottom node selected, and then I'll turn it into a smooth node. I think that shape looks nice. Okay, now let's add a little bit of detail to this shield. I'll just grab the Move tool, and I'm going to press Command or Control J to duplicate this layer. Then while holding Shift and Command or Control, I'm going to resize this from the center point like that. So now for this inner shield piece, I'm going to sample this light color here and apply that. And then I want to apply some sort of emblem to the front of the shield. And just to keep it simple, I'm actually going to use one of the shapes. I'm going to use the square star tool for this. While holding shift, I'll click and drag it outward. I'll make it nice and centered. And then I'm going to make it this red color here. I think I'll make it just a little bit larger by holding shift and command or control. And now we have all the pieces for our shield. So I'll just select all of them over here in the layers panel, and I'll press command or control G to group them. And I'll just rename this shield. Okay, with those fun pieces out of the way, I'll just move this to the side, and I'll bring all of the body pieces back to the center. I like keeping things in my document centered, just so everything lines up with the center point. I found it makes it a lot easier to make things like this, where you want things to be symmetrical. Okay, so now that we're back to the character, let's start on the face. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, and I'll just click and drag while holding shift to create the face. Now right now, this is tucked under everything, but I actually want it on top of everything, so I'll just drag it upward. And I'll also drag this piece upward as well. This piece right here that I'm leaving gray, this is going to be part of the helmet later on. But this red circle here, I need to make more of a skin color. So let me bring it more toward the oranges. That should be good. Okay, so we have the face. Now I'm just going to zoom in here so we can add some details. I'll just keep it very simple and we'll do a couple of circular eyes. I'll make this one black. With the move tool, I'll hold command or control and shift to duplicate that eye and bring it over there. There we go. And then using the ellipse tool one more time, I'm going to just drag out a little simple nose right here. I'm going to make the nose a similar color to the skin, so I'll sample the skin and apply it, and then I'll just make it a little bit darker, like that. As one more face detail, I'm going to hold shift and click and drag an ellipse over here. I'm going to make this sort of like his hair is coming down from out of the helmet. So I'm going to make this a dark brown color, maybe a little more orange. And I'll just make this a child layer to the face. So you can see this sort of just looks like a little bit of hair. All right, that looks pretty good. Now that the face is done, I'm just going to group all of these layers together. And I think I'll actually just select these face pieces and make them child layers to the circle. And then I'll rename this face. Okay, next I want to make the helmet. First, I think I'll recolor this circle here so that it matches this lightest blue color right here. I'll sample that and apply it. Alright, next I'm going to add a little feather on top of the helmet. To do this, I'm just going to click and drag a flattened ellipse like that. And then I'll place it on top over here. I think I'll make this a bit smaller. So that this contrasts with the helmet just a little bit more, I think I'm going to make it a slightly darker blue. So I'll just darken that down just a little bit, and then I'll place it underneath the helmet. So you can see it's just poking out a little bit. This will hold the little feather that I'm about to make. To make the feather, I'll hold shift and I'll click and drag a little circle like that. Snapping is making it hard to place this, so I'll turn off snapping for a moment, and I'll just place that there. And I'll click and drag out another circle and place it here. Alright, with these two circles, I'm just going to select them both. And then I'm going to add them together up here so it's one shape. I'm going to make them this red color. So I'll apply that. And then I'm going to adjust some of these nodes just to smooth this out a little bit. So first I'm going to delete this sharp node and this sharp node. Then I can go ahead and adjust some of these nodes. I think I'll drag this out a little bit to create more of a dip right there. I'll do the same over here, pulling this in a little bit. Maybe I'll pull this down. I'm just trying to make this look a little bit more irregular. And maybe I'll move this in a little bit. Okay, that looks like an abstract feather shape, so I think we're looking good for that. The last thing I want to do for the helmet is I want to create a little bit of a visor. To create that shape, I'm going to go into our shapes and I'll select the tier tool. I'll click and drag out a tier tool shape. And I'm going to make this the same color as this slightly darker blue that I made over here. So I'll just apply that. And then I'll place this over here. Now I want this layer to be placed on top of the helmet, but underneath the face. Then I'll just resize this a little bit. Okay, and I think that visor looks pretty good. I do think, though, that I'd like this color to be slightly darker, just so it contrasts a little bit more with the other gray color. I'm going to select both of those layers and I'll just make their color slightly darker, like that. Okay, I'm going to select all of the layers that I just worked on, and I'm going to group them with Command or Control G, and I'll just call this group Helmet. Now, to finish off the helmet, I just have one more piece I want to create, which is the face shield. To create that, I'm going to use the segment tool. I'll click and drag to create that. I'm going to flip this around, and I'm going to place it sort of at an angle right on the face, but it needs to be above the face so we can see it. So I'll move its layer so that it's placed right there. I want this to be placed like this so that it's partially covering the nose. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to make it the light blue color. Alright, and now I'm going to add a few details to this to make it look more like one of those knight's helmets with the vents going through it in the front. To start, I'll grab the ellipse tool. I'll hold shift, and I'm just going to make a little bolt right here, just as an added detail. The little hinge point. I was going to make it this visor color, but I think I actually want it to be the darkest color. So let me just do that. Just to add more contrast. Okay, now for the vents, I'm going to grab the rectangle tool. I'll click and drag out a skinny rectangle like this. And then I'm going to press Command or Control J to duplicate it. While holding Shift, I'm going to move it over like this. And then I'm going to press Command or Control J a few more times, and this will power duplicate these rectangles across like this. With that finished, I'll select all of our rectangles, I'll press V for the Move tool, and then I can move them in place. I'll angle them so they're the same angle as the helmet, and then I'll just stretch them out so that they're nice and stretched across this face shield, and I'll shorten them. Just to make this go with the rounded edge here, I'm going to select this one, and I'll hold Shift to do that. And I'm going to move these both upward. And I'm going to do that again for these two, holding Shift to select them both, and then moving them upward. Now you can see that just kind of goes with the curve a little bit better. Then I'm going to select all of the rectangles one last time, and just for fun, I'm going to convert them to curves. I'll select all of the nodes, and I'll change them all to smooth nodes. This just adds a little bit of softness and makes them look a little bit cuter. Feel free to adjust them any way you'd like at this point to make sure they're nice and centered. I'm going to select all of the face shield layers over here, and I'll press Command or Control G to group them, and I'll call it the face shield. There we go. Okay, so the hardest part is finished. Now down here, we just need to recolor each of these pieces, and since we made them all separately, this should actually go pretty quick. So I'm just going to sample colors as I go and recolor these shapes. I'll adjust where they're positioned in the layers so that the right shapes are on top of the right areas. And in the middle of this, you'll see that I grouped together all of the arm layers because I forgot to do that earlier. Okay, we're almost done. I think I just want to add one more detail, which is adding some shoulder pads and some knee pads. This will be very easy. I'm just going to click and drag while holding Shift to create a circle, and then I'll place it over the knees like this. I think I want this to be a dark color like this, but I think I'm just going to lighten it slightly. There we go, I think that looks pretty good. So now that we have our first one done, I'll just use the Move tool. I'll hold Command or Control, and I'll just duplicate it across for the other knee. Alright, then I'll hold Command or Control, and I'm going to place it on the shoulder up here. Now, you can't see it where it is, so I'm going to move this up so that it sits right below the face shield. So it's on top of the arm, but below the face shield. I think that looks pretty good. I'll hold Command or Control and Shift, and I'll just move it straight across to the other shoulder. I don't think I like that these are above this piece right here, so I'm actually going to select them both, and I'll just move them below that piece. Okay, that looks better to me. Alright, we're almost done. This is really coming together. To finish this off, I'm just going to place these objects here. Now, I've made them a little bit large, so I'm just going to shrink it down a little bit and place it in the hand. I like the sword being at this angle, so I need to adjust the arm so that it can hold the sword at this angle. So to do that, I'm just going to click into the arms. I'll double click to do that. And then I'll bend the arm like this. And I'll rotate the fist. And now I think we should be able to place the sword like that. Maybe it does need to be angled a little bit more to match, but I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to open up the swords group, and I'm going to make the handle a little bit longer, and maybe a little bit skinnier. Okay, and then I'm actually going to place this sword so that it's underneath the arm layer. Alright, that just looks better. Looks more like it's in our knight's hand here. And last, I'll just place the shield right there. Okay, as one final touch, I'm just going to add a little shadow underneath our knight here. I'll turn on snapping so that it can snap right to the center. And I'll lower the opacity quite a bit. Alright, and just like that, we have our adorable and fierce game character. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Affinity Revolution tutorial.